Hello, Garland Nixon here. Russia, it looks to be planning a major military buildup. Let's talk about why. Hello, all. I don't imagine there'll be a lot of people here tonight. I imagine people are in the US anyway, and various places are getting ready for the holidays. But I'm just kind of chilling. And when I say chilling, I mean that both literally and figuratively, not doing a whole lot. Did a lot of radio today. And now it's like in the 20s or something in Fahrenheit. So very cold night, lots of wind. And believe it or not, I got family members staying over here because of their electricity is out. So just kind of doing my thing. Figured I'd come into the studio and chat a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on. And if you haven't been under, most of the people who watch this channel are paying attention to what's happening. And you see that Russia is now announcing a major military buildup, right? Major military buildup. And a lot of people are talking about what's that about. There are a number of reasons. They're going to have a lot more people. They're going to have a lot more equipment. A couple of things that to start off before I really get into it, and that is, let's face it, they can afford it. One of the things that has been a consequence of the economic war. Keep in mind something. What do we have here? This is a proxy war. The United States, the U.S. empire, I'll say what I think it's about. The power of the U.S. empire is dwindling, and not so much the power of the empire is dwindling, and as is the U.S. is losing power. It's that other powers are rising. Russia's becoming more powerful economically, militarily. China's becoming more powerful economically, militarily. Iran, on and on and on. So you've got other countries that are, excuse me, it's not that the US is slowing up or speeding up. You got other countries that are speeding up that are getting more powerful. As a result, just look up the Wolfowitz doctrine. The problem is that the United States is run by these, what we call neocons, what traditionally in the world has called fascists. We call them neocons. These people are fascists. So the US is being run by a bunch of fascists. And what do fascists want? Power. What else do they want? Power. Anything else? Power. They want power. They're very paranoid. One of the things I think about the issues with neocons is they're paranoid. Why? They're brutal, they're vicious, they're fascist, they're merciless. And you may have heard people say this before: the world is a mirror. A loving person sees a loving world. An untrustworthy person sees an untrustworthy world. The world is a mirror, right? The fascists see the world as a mirror, and they think to themselves, "Oh my God, if the Russians or the Chinese get as much power as us, they'll be every bit as vicious and brutal and merciless as we are." So they feel desperate. They feel an existential threat because they know how vicious and brutal and murderous they are. And they're like, oh my God, other people will be just as bad as us. And then we'll face that, right? That's the problem with a sociopath. They think everybody else is just as brutal as them and they have to save it. So bottom line, the U.S. is in empire is in a battle with modernity. As the world changes, the U.S. is trying to grab everything and hold it back. China's is growing economically. The U.S. is trying to grab them. No, no, you're not going to grow economically. We're going to hold you back. Russia's growing military, economically. Oh, we've got to, what did the U.S. say? We've got to weaken Russia. What does that mean? They're in a fight with modernity. It is the nature of the world that powers rise and fall. Russia is a rising power. The U.S. is saying, no, that's maybe we can't let that happen. It's organic, but we must hold it back. So the U.S. is in a war with modernity, holding back Russia. We got to hold back China. We got to hold back Iran. That's what all these sanctions are about: holding countries down and back so they can't be rising powers, fighting against the current, pushing against modernity. It can't work. But what's happening with Russia? So that's part of that's a general part of the discussion. But let's get into some things that we can sink our teeth into, shall we? Let's get into some things we can sink our teeth into. This is a while back. Start here, 27th of October. You probably saw this. I'm just going to go to Times of Israel because it's as good a place as any. Russian Vladimir Putin says that the coming decade will be the most dangerous since the end of the World War II. Ahead is probably the most dangerous, unpredictable, and at the same time important decade since the end of the Second World War. He said to the Valdai Club that the situation is to a certain extent revolutionary. Absolutely. The Ukraine offensive is only part of the tectonic shifts of the entire world order. That's it. The entire world order is shifting. Powers are rising. New great powers are rising. India aspires to be a great power. That's why India has to go along with China and Russia. They have no choice. They're looking at it saying, holy crap. If we start rising organically and naturally, we build up our things, we build up our economy, we start to grow, the US is going to do the same thing to us. They're going to start surrounding us with bases. They're going to threaten to attack us, and they're going to try to hold us down. The India has no choice. The US has built a dynamic now. They sent the message to the world. Anyone who tries to rise will be attacked by the US empire. That means that anyone who aspires to rise has to come together to stop the US empire so that when it's their turn, they don't want their turn in a barrel. So the US cannot be successful because the entire world, all the aspiring powers, all the developing powers are saying, when it'll be our turn next. That's what these idiots don't realize. Let's continue. Putin says the historical period of undivided dominance of the West in world affairs is coming to an end. The unipolar world is becoming a thing of the past. Putin adds the West is not able to single-handedly govern humanity, but is desperately trying to do it. That's it. That's what's going on. So now, if you say, why is Russia building up its military dramatically? Putin tells you why. Because he says this is a very dangerous decade. Well, if it's a dangerous decade, you better, if you're in a dangerous area, you better learn how to fight. You better learn self-defense. If you feel that people are going to attack you, you need to arm yourself. You're going out into the woods and you think there's bears and wolves, you better carry a gun, because you know what? A knife ain't going to get it for bears and wolves, right? You got to carry the appropriate thing that you need for, if there are people that walk around that carry something like a stick with them or something, right? A walking stick, because they may see a snake or something when they're going for a walk in the woods, or a small animal that they can easily control with a walking stick. But if it's bears, you may want to get a little more something than a walking stick. He's going to use that to pick his teeth with after he eats you. So that ain't going to work, right? Well, when you say it's the most dangerous decade for maybe ever because of nuclear weapons, you want to have the appropriate weapon you're going to need to defend yourself. Now, let's continue on. This is a very, very, very interesting article that people should read and people should understand. This is about Putin's recent speech, NATO's confrontation with Moscow, blah, blah, blah. Really, really important article, but worth its while reading. So Russia is facing, now think about this. Starts off, Russia is facing nearly the entire military potential of NATO in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday during a extended meeting at the board of the Ministry of Defense. So he says, this is it. NATO is coming after us. The entire military potential, they're using everything they got to come after us. Well, if that's the case, you're going to need everything you can to resolve. And one of the things that the Russians are doing is they're moving their military up to like 1.5 million people. My understanding is like 1.5 million capable, right? They're looking and they're saying, look, we want to be able to defend anywhere on our border, anywhere, no matter what. We want a powerful, powerful military. And a part of it is defensive. A big part of it is defensive. We want to be able, well, not the big part of it, really, all of it is defensive, because if you're paying any attention, if you've been paying attention, you know Russia has no intent of invading and attacking Europe, but Europe has attacked the NATO, Russia, over and over and over again. So let's go on. Putin said Moscow's strategic opponents have always tried to cut down and break up Russia because they believe the country is too big. Notice this. He noted this was something the West has been trying to achieve for centuries. In order to understand the dynamics of Russia and Europe, you must look at it through a historical context. The Russians will say, yeah, the Russians have said every 100 years or so, Napoleon, Hitler, every 100 years or so, the West got to come back and try us again. That's what they're saying. He said they've been trying for centuries. We're too big. We freak them out. And they just want to try us. So we're going to have a big enough military to protect ourselves. That's all that's what that's about. He goes on and he says, meanwhile, Russia has always hoped and tried to become a so-called part of the so-called civilized world, but it's come to realize it's simply not welcome there. Putin said. Well, if you understand history, you know that's true. You know that Vladimir Putin asked to join NATO. He asked to be a part of the EU, but keep in mind at that time the U.S. couldn't ever do that for two reasons. Two reasons. Number one, because a lot of money is made with a boogeyman, so they need Russia as a boogeyman. Number two, because the United States, the US empire, is not the kind of group that makes friends. They want to control everything. It is a colonial style power. It is an empire style power. So the US only sees two kinds of countries. These neocons that run the US see two kind of countries: countries that they have conquered and countries that they intend to conquer. And if you want to know which countries they conquered, look at which countries have bases. Well, all throughout Europe, they're bases. That's what they do. When they conquer a country, they put bases in there. Ostensibly, the bases are to defend themselves in the area. In reality, the bases are an occupation force. So when you look at Europe and you see all these bases, those bases are not there to protect Europe. Ain't nobody trying to attack Europe. They're an occupation force. In South Korea, they're an occupation force. They leave an occupation force there. And if they need it as a jump off point to attack someone, they got bases all over the place. But more importantly, they're occupying your country. You will do what the hell you're told. And there will be no questions about that. And that's what's going on. Okay, so we won't talk about the Ukraine as a brotherly nation. That doesn't help us on this particular video, but we go on. Putin stated NATO was currently using the military potential of all of its member states against Moscow. He noted Russia has learned a lot from its mistakes in the past, would not harm itself by militarizing. So he says, we're not going to completely militarize our economy because that's going to hurt our economy. We don't want to live like that. The U.S. kind of has a military economy. We will not militarize our country. We will not militarize the economy, stressing that Russia's current level of development doesn't require such measures. One of the things he's saying is this: man, we're making enough money. We don't have to. We're getting paid. One of the consequences of this war on Russia, of this proxy war, is that it has driven up the price of the very commodities that Russia sells. So Russia's making more money than ever. Russia can sell less and make more. And right now, with this oil price cap, Russia's already said, here's what we're going to do. We are going to lower the amount of oil that we sell. Now, you may look at that and say, well, that's stupid. If you lower the price, I mean, the amount of oil, the output by about 7%, then we're going to lower the output of oil. That's what I've been talking a lot. That's what I mean. Russia is going to lower their output by about 7%. Okay. And you may look at that and say, wow, well, you're going to make less money. No, no, no. You got to understand the way these world commodity markets work. They're going to create scarcity. And what happens when you create scarcity? The price goes up. So what this cap on Russian oil is going to do, number one, that's going to drive the price up. Number two, Russia's now saying, and we're going to cut production, which will also drive the price up. Now, I'm sure the guarantee they talked with their buddies in OPEC Plus. And they're not going to push back on it. Why? Because it's going to drive the price up and they're going to make money. OPEC's going to make money. Saudi Arabia is going to eat. UAE, all the countries that sell oil are going to eat well off of this. So the Russians are saying, you go ahead, you do your price cap. Any country that does it, we won't sell them oil. So add number one. So you guys are going to have to buy it off secondary markets. Number two, the price is going to be up so we can sell less and make more. Thanks. That's what's going to happen. They're going to sell less at a higher price and make more. Okay. He added that military leaders have been tasked with studying NATO's tactics and capabilities. So again, that's what people do. That's normal. If you listen to me with Scott Ritter, you listen to Scott Ritter talk about that. That's what happens in a war. People pay attention to what the other side's doing. They take notes and they try to learn from that. Now we'll go down to here. Modernizing the Russian military. The president emphasized the need to bolster the use of drones in the Russian army, pointed to the country's experience in developing underwater drones, which he said should be improved upon to create more advanced air and ground drones. Right. So one of the things we see that the Russians, and it's interesting because Alexander Mercouris said something about this, and I kind of agree. He said, the days of unmanned aircraft are they going to be behind us? maybe not completely, but somewhat, because what have we learned? That the Russians have been able to strike all over Ukraine very, very effectively using long range missiles, standoff, right? Attack weapons, long range missiles, and drones. Very inexpensive and cheap drones are very, very difficult to stop. 10 grand each, and man, they come in and blow the hell out of anything, right? So Putin says right here, we're going to bolster the use of drones. So they've, through their experience, they've come to understand that drones are very, very effective for any number of things. Fire correction, artillery, everything you do, drones is good. So I suspect what you're going to see is the Russians really building up their drone forces. They're going to build, ground forces that specialize in drones, and they're going to start incorporating the use of drones into everything they do. I think that's what you're going to see. He suggested modernizing communication systems, artificial intelligence technologies. Who's number one with artificial intelligence in the world? China. Okay, across all decision-making levels, noting that fast and automated systems have proven to be most effective on the battlefield. Number of structural changes. And listen to this. In response to NATO bolstering its forces on the border with Russia and potentially extending membership to Finland and Sweden. So look at what we're saying. So why is Russia building its forces up? Number one, they said it's the most dangerous decade since World War II. Number two, here's one thing for sure. Finland and Sweden. NATO's putting forces on the border. Finland and Sweden, their borders coming into play. So Russia's saying, look, it's going to be a dangerous world for a while. We got the NATO's up in the ante. If they want to up the ante, we'll up the defensive ante. And so that's one of the things that's going on. Excuse me. I think, pardon me for yawning, I do think that something very interesting is going on. And everybody, people who are in the know are paying close attention to it. And that is Dmitry Medvedev, the guy who is he's the head of the Russian Security Council. B, he's the former president. C, he's extremely hawkish. D, it is believed that he is pretty much in charge of the military industrial complex for Russia. So this guy just went to China. Very, very interesting. I'm very interested in that because apparently he took a message from Russia and from Putin to Xi, and Xi sent him a message. Could have been something that he signed. A lot of people think it's a military alliance. Here's something I think could possibly be. And this is something from, I've Scott Ritter on a lot. We've interviewed him a ton over the course of time. Here's what I think. That isn't it possible? Russia's military technology is fantastic. Their industrial capacity is very, very good, but it doesn't touch China's industrial capacity. China has incredible industrial capacity, very, very outstanding technology, but incredible industrial capacity. What happens if Russia says these S-400s are good and S-550s, which are very, very good anti-aircraft, these whatever drones we're making, this and that? What happens if China says, great, we'll make the S-400s. We'll build the whatever planes you have. We'll build the Yasin class subs. What happens if China says and Russia decides they're going to take Russia's outstanding. I mean, those Yasin class subs are some of the best in the world. Their missile technology is outstanding. What happens if Russia says to China, look, we'll share the technology, you do the building, we'll build together, blah, blah, blah. And so what you have is because let me say this. When people talk about Russia and China, what they think about is if they would have a military alliance where they just say, if you attack one, you attack us both. Sure, that's a traditional military alliance and that's possible. But Russia and China for a long time have been saying, look, we're better than alliance, we're better than friends. That what could be going on next. And it wouldn't shock me, it wouldn't surprise me. And I don't think Russia and China would necessarily come out and say this, right? But and that is what happens if Russia and China decide we're going to start building our stuff together. We're going to take the best of what Russia has, the best of what China has. We're going to put gigantic factories up in China, and we're going to spit that stuff out day and night. I mean, when you think about the kind of industrial capacity that China has, it's unmatched in the world. So what happens if now China says these um, hypersonic missiles that Russia has, we're going to spit them things out like crazy, right? And not only that, they say, so now Russia's loaded to the gills with hypersonic missiles. China's loaded to the gills. And they say, you know what? Iran's our friend. Iran's loaded to the gills with hypersonic missiles. You know what I'm saying? They have their alliance. They're all loaded with those things that Russia and China, et cetera, have. The advanced anti-aircraft, the drones, all the things that they have. China starts joining Russia, and they bring together their industrial and military and technological capacities. I think there's something's up. Now it could simply be, and I might add, when we talk about that, the Dmitry Medvedev moved to Russia, to China, it just could simply be also that Russia's going to make their big offensive move, and they're saying to China, look, this is what we're going to do. This is what we want, your blessings, whatever, because they're very close, and who knows what could go down. So, whatever. But there's something going on between Russia and China, and the reality is we might not know what it is. It could be that they're like, okay, it's top secret, So whatever the case, I'll put it like this though. They made announcements. They wanted everybody to know. They wanted to keep their adversaries on their toes. It also appears that Russia and or China seems to be sharing technology with Iran. It seems that there's some military technological sharing going on here. That aspect of the alliance of these countries is definitely growing, and it's growing because the U.S. is getting more and more belligerent. So I think it's important to look at that. But the bottom line is, so that's it. I was just going to do a short video today to chat for a little bit. I'm kind of tired, but I did want to talk about that. Let me look. We don't have any super chats, but we got some questions, so we will look and see what we got here. That's probably true. For the longest, the West was painting Medvedev as Putin's lapdog. The joke's on him. Medvedev is, in fact, Putin's pit bull. Yeah, he's a guy. Look, here's the bottom line. Russia's just like any other country. They've got lots of different politicians who take different positions. They've got extreme hardliners. They've got people who are more dovish, more hawkish, things, just like any other country. The West tries to paint Russia as Putin is a dictator and he says everything and everybody listens to him. And like they do with every country that they see as adversarial. Maduro's a dictator. Everybody, Assad's a dictator. The mullahs they call in charge of they're dictators. Everybody's a dictator. What they pretend is, number one, whoever's running the country is not acting on behalf of the people. Therefore, it's okay to attack the country. Well, we're freeing the country from the people. I mean, we're freeing the people from the dictator, right? That's the game. So Medvedev, according to the U.S., there's nothing. Oh, there's only Putin. They don't even have a government in Russia. Putin just stands around and orders everybody around. That is a propaganda game. Somebody says, I think you have more rights in Russia than in the UK right now. You can't have less. You got no rights in the UK. It's the UK, the US, the EU. These are fascist states. We're living in a fascist state. Do you have less rights than China? Yes. The US, the UK, we got less rights than Russia. We got less rights than China. There ain't a whole lot of countries that got less rights than us. They're locking people up for covering things on the news. Ask Julian Assange who's got more rights. I don't see the people in Russia. Do you see Russia or China trying to bring somebody from another country back so they could prosecute them just for telling the truth? No, you can't possibly have less rights than you have here. I don't care if you're on the friggin' moon. If Putin was a terrible dictator, the West paints him to be, it would have, in fact, been overthrown by the people. Well, he wouldn't have a 78% approval rating, for one. How about this? I hope as many people can go as possible and make it loud and clear that this nonstop war. Oh, people are talking about the big rage against the war machine. Let me show you guys, for those who haven't seen that, rage against the war. I'm looking it up because some people may not have heard about it. I'm one of the speakers. I hope it gets big. Oh man. They've look, they're trying to hide it. Oh man. Well, there it is on Twitter. Okay. Rage Against the War Machine. Let us take a look. Thanks a lot for bringing that up. I'm going to show everybody, for people who aren't aware of it, you need to share it. Rage Against the War Machine, right? Now, it's February 19th. It's an anti-war rally in Washington, D.C., the Libertarian Party and the People's Party. Okay. RageAgainstWar.com is the website. See, there we go. Rage Against the War. February 19th, anti-war rally, Washington, D.C. I understand that George Galloway is working on doing something in London. The people, I'm involved. The people are looking at doing some more things. We got, so far with speakers, we got Jimmy Dore, we got Medea Benjamin, we got Scott Horton, and yours truly. So our coalition, look at some of the groups: People's Party, Peace in Ukraine, the Mises Caucus, Action for Assange, Punk Rock Libertarians. So we got a lot of people that are involved. And look what our demands are: not one more penny for war in Ukraine, negotiate peace, stop the war inflation, which is, all of the things that we're suffering economically as a result of the economic war, disband NATO, yay, global nuclear de-escalation, slash the Pentagon budget, abolish the CIA and military industrial deep state, abolish war and empire, restore civil liberties, and free Julian Assange. So that's rageagainstwar.com. It's worth your while to go check that out. And hopefully everybody will support that. People will be a part of that. RageAgainstWar.com. Go to Twitter and follow the Rage Against War people on Twitter also. See there, so you haven't seen them. It is Rage Against War _ at Rage Against War _. So everybody has to follow. Please, please, please follow that. Someone says, those are solid demands. Yes. Now here's the thing. People are going to say, you're saying abolish NATO. That's not going to happen. You got to ask for it. One of the things that people make a mistake when it comes to, if you've ever talked about, learned about negotiating, right? You don't go out and ask for exactly what ask for the minimal. You don't start like, well, we'd like you to just, maybe people wouldn't be pushed or something. No, you go max. Abolish NATO. You say what the hell you want when you're negotiating. You tell people what you want. You go twice above what you want. All of those, first of all of those things are reasonable demands. Is there anything unreasonable about that? Abolish NATO. NATO is an aggressive, militaristic, imperialist organization that needs to be disbanded. Julian Assange should be free. All of those things are reasonable things to ask. It's what a reasonable world should ask for. So that's what we're all about, and I hope everybody supports it. Pratik says, your thoughts on possible India-China conflict, both being nuclear. If BRICS are not united, would it help the West in maintaining their hegemony? I think that there is some enmity between India and China, but I believe they will be able to work it out. I do believe that India and China, they got some issues, but I think they understand the importance of what's going on in the world right now, and they understand that there's somebody out there, that's far worse. And so I think they will maybe have some dust ups, but I think they're going to work this out. I think Russia has really been working on trying to smooth that over. So let's see what happens. In the same way, Saudi Arabia and the Iranians have been meeting lately. So they want to be in some of the same economic clubs. You got the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS. These countries are aspiring to be in that. I think you're going to see some of these countries find a way to smooth over some of their differences because they've got economic plans. Let's see anything else. Let's go over to Rockfin, see what some people got to ask over there. Mike Cotter, thanks a lot, Mike. Okay. Our politicians, Okie Rich says, our politicians feel they're untouchable. It's time to make them afraid by shutting their lights off. Vitamin L is what they need. Oh, that's funny. Vitamin L. Okay. Vitamin. Someone says, glad to see you live, but Garland, but to whom are you responding outside of Rockfin? I don't see you responding here. here. Well, I don't know. I'm talking about I'm doing Rockfin. I'm doing my StreamYard thing. So there we go. I'm doing the best I can. Vladimir Putin is a historical personage of our times, period, for the 21st century for our times. Putin is a very, very interesting character, very charismatic, powerful individual. I personally, in my opinion, I do think he's a powerful statesman. The United States, the US, you know how the game is, the propaganda game. If you are the head of another powerful country, you must be an evil dictator. I mean, it just shocks me. It doesn't shock me, but I mean, it at least surprises me to keep buying into that crap. Anybody that the machine doesn't like is an evil dictator. Yeah, but how is you an evil dictator if 78% of the people in your country, are if you got like a 78% approval rating? How's that an evil dictator? Apparently, the people in the country don't feel like that. Again, Okie Rich says American politicians have made our country a disgusting bully. True. Unfortunately, the citizens of America will have to pay for letting our government have free reign to do what they want. That's a fact. And part of it is what we're dealing with here, and that is that stinking propaganda machine that we're up against. Thrill Arma says the question is whether those demos will have any effect. The government shock troops are already demos are standing by. Sure. Here's the thing, though. You got to do it. You got to do it. I don't know if they'll have any effect or not, but you got to do it. First of all, anything that happens is going to have some effect on something, but you have to do it. You can't say, well, I don't know if it'll have any effect, therefore I'm not going to do it. Well, if you don't know it will have any effect, it says the question is whether they will. Well, here's what I can guarantee you. They won't have any if you don't do them. They won't. You may do them, they may not have any effect. One thing it will do, though, here's what's important too in America. We need to rebuild an anti-war movement, right? This may be a way to help do that. You got to start somewhere. You just can't throw in the towel. And I think starting by saying we're going to have do this thing, and we're going to have an anti-war movement, and we're going to have an anti-war rally. Of course, you know what's going to happen. The FBI is going to say, "Oh my gosh, the Russians are up to no good. The Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the Syrians, the Venezuelans, everybody's out to get us." They're going to use the usual stuff. Oh, it's the Russians, of course. So whatever. You got to just say that I know that's coming, but we're going to do what we got to do to try to at least make our voices heard. We can't even speak the word democracy if we're not trying to exercise it. Democracy is something that's exercised. It's an aspiration, something you aspire to. Here's what we're going to say. We're exercising it. I don't think it's a democracy, but we're going to exercise our democratic principles. How's that? Please answer Salty Trucker super chat. All right, Salty Trucker has a super chat. Let me look. I love Salty Trucker. Who's this one? Your thoughts on possible. That's okay. I'm looking. Oh. Rockabilly says, isn't this war multipolarity versus unipolarity, economically, militarily narrow versus Russia? Conflicts goes hand in hand. Yes, it is. And it's also Russia is fighting a military war. What the Western capital is doing is this big globalist capital is saying, okay, Ukraine is the battlefield. The Ukrainian military, they're the cannon fodder. We're going to use our money. So they're taking big capital. They're driving all this capital towards Ukraine, thinking we'll just throw all this money. They think money does everything, fixes anything, screws anything up. So they think if they throw enough money at Russia, Russia can't lose. Well, you know what? That doesn't work. But they don't know that. They're going to find out. So it's big capital also. It's finance capital, right? That's the financialized economy, asset-backed securities and derivatives, right? Okay, so it's financialized economies versus industrial China and commodity-based Russia and industrial Russia so it's old school economies versus this financialized Wall Street globalist crap. That's really what it is. And the capital, the money is they're trying to win the war with money. If we pour enough money into, we can't possibly lose. But I understand Salty Trucker. I'm going to look if Salty Trucker has a super chat. I ain't seeing it. Who's this? Oh, found it. Here we go. I suspect that when Ukraine gets rolled up, the West will drop them like a hot potato. I agree. That's what I've been saying for a while. Look at the history. You are as the tuna, right? Bill Parcells, famous football coach. They said, "Oh, you've got a great team, a fantastic team. How come you're not winning it?" Will, and he said, "We ain't a fantastic team. You are what your record says you are. We got a bad record. We're a bad team, right?" The U.S. empire has done what? What do they do? What do they do? They use proxies. They set them out there, and when the proxies get blown to hell, they walk away and leave them to die. That's what they've done every time. I don't think they're going to do it different this time. Now they put everything they put their reputation completely on the line. Yeah, but the history of the U.S. empire says it uses proxies. When the proxies lose, it's game over for the proxies. Now there are a couple of things here that would make you question that. Number one, the neocons' plan is we're gonna break Russia up. We're gonna steal all of Russia's stuff. We're gonna be powerful. We're gonna rule the world. At some point, they're gonna realize we can't do that, and that time is coming. The time is coming. The only thing they've got now is the rhetoric to tell their people we're winning. Ukraine's winning. Ukraine's winning means we're winning. Why is it that the neocons keep saying that the U.S. A media machine keeps saying Ukraine's winning, Ukraine's winning, Ukraine's winning? Because it's a proxy war. They're not saying Ukraine's winning. They're saying we're winning. Our proxies are winning. Our proxy army is winning. They can't say our proxy army is losing. They can never say we're losing. We're losing, so we got to send more stuff. They can't say that. So they got to say we're winning, and we got to see more stuff, do more stuff to help us win. At some point, that's going to run into reality. And it ain't no way around that. And when it runs into reality, the question is, what are they going to do? But what are their options? Their options are suicide. That is their options. What are they going to do? Are they going to say, well, we're going to send in them? People are like, the U.S. is going to send in troops on the ground. We don't have, let's talk to Scott Ritter. We've got light infantry. We don't have the troops on the ground. We can't send in the troops in the ground. Now, what they can do is get the suckers in Poland, those idiots, and say, all right, Poland, you go in there and get slaughtered. And then send Poland in and say, hey, Poland, all the Ukrainians are dead. You're up. Get in there and start dying. And, we hopefully get the Poles in there. Maybe they can get some of the other Eastern Europeans in there and get them slaughtered. Yeah, well, don't worry. In the same way that we gave the Ukrainians weapons, we'll keep giving you weapons. Just let your people get slaughtered mercilessly. Why? Because we don't care. We just want to occupy the Russians slaughtering people. And you're just as good to get slaughtered as anybody else, Poles. The Latvians, the Slovakians, the Blockians, they don't give a damn. Just get in there and get slaughtered. That's your job. The Ukrainians are really good right now with getting slaughtered. And now, Poles, if you could step up to the plate, throw your young troops in there and get them slaughtered and occupy the Russian artillery with your bodies. That will that happen? I don't know. It's very dangerous, but it could possibly happen. And the question is, will the Poles do it? Yes, they will. Will they do it? Now, here's the next question. Will the U.S. empire come in to rescue the Poles? No, they won't. They'll do just like, look, this is what they do. They're feeding the wood chipper. We got a wood chipper. Throw another body. Blood and guts comes out. And they'll do that till there's no more Ukraine. Then they'll look at the Poles. Your turn. And the Poles, these freaking idiots. Oh my gosh, we hate the Russians so bad. We're willing to do anything. Okay, you idiots, you're willing to go over there and die for us? Sure, love to. Good, go die until there's none of you left. Then they'll go in there and then they'll die. Look, they're loaded with Ukrainian refugees. They're all in. They're starving, they're freezing, and they're like, make it worse. We don't care how much we have to suffer as long as the Russians aren't suffering. Well, let's just keep trying to make them suffer. And that's what you use suckers for. That's what the U.S. empire does with suckers. That's what they're going to do with a sucker. That's what a sucker is to be done with. That's how a sucker is to be used. They're suckers. That's what they'll do with the Poles. Throw them in there and let them get ground up. And I think the Russians understand this. The Russians are set up for a big fight. The Russians are setting up for a long fight. But that long fight, look at this. The Russians aren't just setting up for a long fight with the Ukrainians. The Russians are looking at it saying, we are going to be prepared to defend our border. We got the money, we got the power, we got the economy, we got a big friend over here in China. We're going to keep rolling. And part of the message could have been, look, we're setting up to defend our border and we're going to be defending it for a while because China's got their back. China knows they can't let Russia lose, because if Russia loses, which they won't anyway, they're powerful enough to win. But I'm just saying, China knows they're going to back them. So now I think the Russians are like this. We're going to light up the Ukrainians. If the Poles want some, they can come on in and get some too. Till they're done. What is it? 1 million people in Latvia, the country's the size of like the community that I live in. Here in Maryland, I probably got more people in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area. My community is Lafayette. Okay. So the bottom line is this: the Russians are looking at these postage stamps size countries saying they know France and Germany ain't coming in. They know Western Europe is not going to go up there to die on the Russian border. They know France and Germany are like, yeah, no. But they know that the Latvians and the postage size stamp company countries and these other idiots that hate the Russians so bad that they'll let let the U.S. throw them in a wood chipper are ready to get yes, throw us in, wipe us all out. And the Russians are like, if we got to defend our border, and you idiots want to step up to the border and fight us, we'll tear your asses limb from limb. And I think that's what the Russians are setting up. You come to the Russian border, they ain't going to come looking for you. They're not going to go, hey, let's fight. I'm going to go, let me go out to you. No, they're not going to wander away from their border looking for Russia and China. They're not heading for Paris. They're not looking for Copenhagen. They're going to stay on their border. But if you step up to their border and you want some trouble, they're going to be prepared to give it to you. I think that's what you're looking at. And I think at the worst case scenario is that the U.S. sends those poor suckers in Latvia and those kinds of places in yes, yeah, you got to go down there, Ukraine, and fight the Russians. It's like the Ukrainians are all wiped out. Okay, the Poles go in, and let's face it, things don't work out well for them. Then they're going to call up next suckers. The wood chipper's still running, and it ain't going to just fill itself full of bodies. Latvians, get over here. There you go. Get in line. There's the Russian artillery. Go hug it. And then there are the Latvians and the Slovakians and all the people. So it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. But these people are on the Russian border, and they are 1/1,000,000th the size of Russia. But somehow they hate the Russians. It's like there's a bear next door. What do you do? I hate that bear. What are you going to do? I'm going to go over and poke the bear. That bear's going to tear you up. And if you're stupid enough, and if somebody who isn't even in the community is looking at you, lives nowhere near 7,000 miles away, calls you, if I were you, I'd go poke that bear. Yeah, I'm going to poke the bear. Hang up on them. Don't listen to them, Latvia and Poland. Don't listen to them. They're going to send you over there to get torn to shreds by the bear. But no. The Poles and the Latvians, nope, they ain't listening to Garland. They're going to listen to the U.S. calling him to Victoria Nuland, calling them from 7,000 miles away, saying, do you have a bunch of young men? Yeah, we got plenty of young men. Russian artillery's that way. Go hug it. Yeah. Are you going to back us up? Victoria Nuland's going to be like, yeah, sure. Oh, of course. What, us? Yeah. As soon as things get tough, we're going to come in and help you take out the Russians. And the Poles and the Latvians will be like, yeah, oh boy. Hey, let's go in because the United States has our back. As soon as we get into trouble, they're coming in. They ain't coming. They never coming. It's nothing but a heartbreaking liar's promise. You're throwing you into the wood chipper. They just want to keep Russia occupied, hopefully to weaken Russia. At some point, they'll wake up and realize Russia's up to the fight. They did it with Napoleon. They did it with Hitler, and they're ready to do it again. And if it's the Latvians and the Poles or whoever, they'll dispense with them fairly easily, to be quite frank. They'll dispense with them. They're used to doing this. They've done it before. It's going to be a long winter for the Latvians and the Slovakians and the Poles and whatever idiots are stupid enough to come up to the Russian border thinking they want to fight. You ain't going home. You go up to the Russian border looking for a fight. You ain't going home. You're never going home. If you get home, it's going to be in a box. That's the reality of that. I think it's unfortunate, but I think that's where we are. I do not see the U.S. empire actually going to, but that could be wrong. Anything could be wrong, because if the U.S. empire does, then that ends up in nuclear war, and that's that. I don't think that. I just don't think that happens. But you never know. I could be wrong. Okay, let me look. Anybody else? Any more super chats that I missed? Because I want to make sure. A good old Kirill says, so what do you think about the dead Ukrainian soldiers getting their organs sold on the market? I don't really know anything about that, so I can't comment on something I've heard, but I have no idea. What we got here. If Poland troops enter Ukraine, will Russia destroy Poland military capabilities within their country? That's a good question. I don't know what they'll do, but I just don't think the U.S. will jump in. I don't think that's much of an option. One idea is that Ukraine is going in first to soften Russia, but I don't think many countries will want to get Ukraine. I agree. I certainly agree with that. I certainly agree with that. You know, that it's who wants to be the next Ukraine. I mean, look at the Taiwan elections. The Taiwanese don't want to be the next Ukraine. There are a lot of Asian countries that are saying I don't want to be the next Ukraine. You should look at First Thessalonians. Compare this with the article. Okay, somebody's. So Zelensky with his green T-shirt addressing Congress, and Congress clapping like trained seals. Pathetic. Oh yeah, you know the game here. Russia stands in the way of the deep state's of global domination and control. You are correct. Couldn't be righter than that. All right, gang. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Anything else? Right now, Western Russia is a barrel, and Russia is shooting Ukraine fish. Yeah, I think you're right. Heard more Ukrainian or Russian than English when doing my Christmas shopping. I'm not anti-refugee, but Ireland's taking in too many. Not looking forward to tens of millions more Ukrainians. So, yeah, look, bad news for you guys who are living in Europe. Those Iranians ain't never going home. And there's a lot more coming. Millions, maybe another 10, 15 million coming. They're all getting the hell out of Ukraine. Ukraine's going to be a skeleton. Nobody's going to be there. They ain't never coming back. And you know what? People ain't going to be happy about having Ukrainians in their country at some point. They're going to wake up and say, good God, we can't afford to feed ourselves and heat ourselves. And we got a million new more of these people. They ain't going to like it. And there's going to be some prejudice towards Ukrainians at some point, bad prejudice towards Ukrainians, because people are going to be angry at the government. They're going to be angry at the policies of the government, and they're going to take it out on the Ukrainians. So it is what it is. Yeah, that Ukrainian refugee issue is going to be a nasty problem at some point. All right. Let me see. Anything else? Sad situation for both countries, of course. These people are so freaking lazy and selfish. I don't know who that is, but I will tell you this. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, everything's scrolling across the bottom. I hope everybody's having a wonderful holidays and things of that nature. Of course, become a Rock Fan. You can go to Rock Fan, and it's absolutely free to become a member of Rock Fan and become a member. Just in case they toss my behind off of YouTube, you will be able to find me on Rockfin. As I always say, you can become a member of Rockfin. I think it's $14.99 a month, but if I think it's $14.99 a month, but if you become a member for a year, you get 2 free months. But the bottom line is, if you can become a Rockfin member, Rockfin is great in that it's a free speech platform, and they don't have any advertisements. So if you can become a paying subscriber, that'd be great. If you don't, just become a member. And I understand, and share all of my videos on all of your social media platforms. You see everything scrolling across. If you can, patreon.com/Garlandix. And if you can $1, $5, $3, $100, whatever you can do a month will help. Appreciate that. If buy me a coffee is always great. /GarlandNH, and of course Cash App. Anything if you can help the channel, that's great. If you're not, if you don't have the money, don't worry about it. Spend it on your family. I know times are hard. If you can help the channel, that'd be great. Thanks a lot, everybody. I certainly appreciate things. I'm tired. My daughter's here and her husband because their electricity is out. So I'm going to go hang out with them for a little while, as long as I can, and crash. Got a lot of things to do. I got things to cook tomorrow. I got lots of football. It's football. I mean, excuse me, American football. Okay. Not the real football. But you all have a wonderful time. I'll be back on sometime tomorrow. Peace. I'm out.